Hello duckies, and welcome back to a brand new Sims 4 build video. Today we are building a Japanese tea garden. What I'm doing here is breaking the tea garden down into sections so that I can figure out exactly what I want to do in each section. But for a Japanese build, I always like to try to have utilize the concept of wabi-sabi, which it just means that you keep things balanced. So in order to do that, that was why I put those fences down, so I would have a visual marker for where those halfway places would be. I also put in some hills to give the landscape some more variety, and also to allow us to see more of the actual plants and stuff when I put them in, because the elevation really helps with that. So here I'm building the actual tea house for the garden. I think I changed it quite a bit pretty soon here. But that is the basic breakdown of that one. And then when I do change it, I don't change it very much. The tea house itself is pretty simple. I based it off of the tea house that's in the Portland Japanese garden, Portland, Oregon Japanese garden. That I looked at quite a few different sources before building this. And that was just one that I used. I liked it, the idea that it had the raised platform so that visitors and guests can actually see the tea ceremony being performed. I just really liked that idea, so I incorporated it into this build as well. I am by no means an expert on Japanese ceremony or culture or architecture. I know a little tiny bit, and I did try to do research, but if I got anything wrong, I apologize. And if you know something about that, if you could put it down in the comments below so that we all have a chance to learn a little bit more about Japanese culture, that would be really cool. So I'm finishing up this path here. I really wanted to make this whole build extremely natural looking, because that's one thing that I have noticed with the Japanese gardens that I have had the pleasure of seeing, is they have a very natural feel to them, less planned, I would say, but then at the same time you can see the different principles of balance that they use. It's just a really pretty aesthetic that they go for. And I don't know that I have nailed it. I think that I tried with a pretty small amount of actual research compared to what I would like to do. I tried to incorporate as much of the ideas of balance and harmony and things that I was able to. But I do not understand the culture well enough, I think, to do it what I would consider doing it justice. However, I wanted to build this anyway because I tend to be a perfectionist about things like that, and I think that when you build things like this, or look at, visit a Japanese garden, or try to just look at them and see the elements of them from the outside, it does help you to learn a little bit more about the culture each time that you sort of dip your toe in. And as long as you're open about that, I don't think it's a problem. At least that's how I feel about my own culture. I'm very Scottish and British, and I actually didn't know that until fairly recently, but I'm mostly American. So what I mean by that is just like, if people were to stereotype Americans or get certain elements of American culture wrong or something, like, I wouldn't necessarily be offended by that. Especially if they were trying to understand, but didn't quite get it right. But frankly, as an American, I could say right now, there's a lot about American culture that I think can be caricatured pretty easily, and I wouldn't even necessarily find that offensive, although I wouldn't do that to another culture. So anyway, that's enough on that subject. So here, with the spray paint that I used on the terrain, I was marking space for when the new pond tool came out, because I built this before the pond tool was released, which is now part of base game. And so I wanted to do something really cool with it, which is part of why I decided to build a Japanese garden anyway, because I just thought, oh, how cool would it be to have actual ponds instead of building pools and sticking rocks and trees and branches all around the edges to try to make it look right. So that's what that spray paint is, and I believe I took it out later on down the line. When I did get the pond tool, I went back and erased all of it. So here I'm putting in some more bushes and rocks and branches. I really wanted every single side of this tea house to have a really, really pretty view. And one of the things that I tried to do as well was I put some grass at the edges of the ponds to make it look kind of like, you know how when you see like marsh grass where the ground underneath is soggy and there's just like, it's kind of gross looking. But I kind of wanted to mimic that effect and create something that that had a look of the ground being sodden, but there's still being some grasses there. I think I covered almost every single tile on this build with either grass or trees or flowers. I also used a lot of color. So one thing I would say too, if you are going to download this from the gallery, this build takes a lot of resources. So maybe download one of my smaller builds, because this has so many trees and flowers and rocks and grass and everything. Like, it takes quite a bit of time to render everything, and it takes a lot of resources. It actually, I have to be careful with it on my computer, and my computer's pretty souped up. In terms of like when I film it and stuff, I had to make sure that I didn't have any other programs running, and just did like very basic filming so that it would work correctly and look nice. So here I'm trying to get these things to stick to the side of the mountain, which is probably one of the things that bothers me the most when I'm doing this kind of a build and playing with elevations. It's like not all of the plants stick. Some of them do, some of them don't. The solution that I've come up with is cutting like a shelf into the side of the mountain and then putting the plants over it, which it works okay, depending on the plants that you put to cover the shelf that you put in. But it still doesn't sit right with me, and I just wish that they all stick, because it's very frustrating that they don't. There is a particular bush in base game that I know sticks really well. And there's some that do stick, but that's not always the look that I'm going for, and so it's kind of frustrating. See here, I'm putting putting that shelf into that area so that it can make it stick. And that's another thing I like to do, is put colored flowers underneath like ivy or something so they look like they're popping through. I just think it gives such a pretty result, and it looks so like soft and natural. I actually did that on a house I'm working on recently. A house I'm working on today, actually. I was working on it, and it's like a little cottage, and I used that effect on the side as well. So you can use it not only for landscaping, but you can also do that same effect with the lay-up house flowers, which I think come with Get Together. I put them in the ivy that comes with what's the name of it? Cottage Living. I put them within the ivy that comes with Cottage Living, and they just peek out, and it's just so cute. It gives such a nice little like hit of color, And it's nice. That rock, I probably use that rock in almost every single build where I'm doing this kind of pond situation, because it sticks so well and it's nice and big. It's a nice shape. I feel like it gives that sort of curved shape that I'm always trying to get when I'm building a pond oriented build. So we're just about, here now we are at the point where we have the pond tool now. And so I'm going through and putting in some more flowers. And then before long, I will be adding, I guess we're not at the pond tool yet. Okay, we're just putting in flowers. So putting in the flowers, I tried to use various colors, and this is kind of how I do this, where it looks sort of random. I try to do almost like a checkered board pattern and use different colors of different types of flowers, and then just fill in the gaps as I go, so that you end up with this sort of riot of color where the flowers look like they're all like totally different and there's no rhyme or reason to it, and it's just totally random. But really, like, I went through and did it very specifically in that way so that it would look that way. That's one thing that I have discovered in my building over time, is that putting in things that look random is really, really hard. It's a lot harder than other things. So here I'm filling out this bamboo forest because I loved the idea of having a lot of bamboo to the side here, but I had not put in enough bamboo there to make it look really full and lush, because that was the main plan with this whole build, was just to make everything look very lush and green, and all the plants, because we as simmers, we love the plants. That's one thing that you see all over the community, is the plant love. I was using that same sort of technique here with putting some bushes in to that sort of checkerboard and then fill in the gap technique to get these bushes in, right? And I'm using that shelf technique that I was talking about before with the terrain. The way that I'm doing that is, if you go into the terrain manipulation menu, you can flatten to height. That's not the one you want. You want the one that's flattened. You flatten it and you make a little like shelf, so you kind of just push it into the side of the hill and it will flatten it. I also use the smooth option a lot. One thing that Kate Emerald says when it comes to using terrain tools is it's really just a matter of playing around with it until you get it to look how you want it to look. And I would wholeheartedly agree with that. Just don't be, if you want to use them, don't be afraid of them. Like, just play with them, and then slowly you'll figure out how to get different effects. I do wish that more plants and flowers stuck to the hills, but at least we have some of them that do. Quite a few of the rocks stick, which I really appreciate, because what I tend to do is use the rocks around a pool, although I won't have to do that anymore now that we have the pond tool, which is pretty cool. So if I put rocks in, it will be because I want to put rocks in, not because I need to hide the pool edge, which is very exciting going forward. So here we are finishing up some more of the little flowers, and I also put those water lilies in this build because I really wanted there to be koi fish in the ponds. I also used the new effects, although I think that I did not film it when I put the new effects in, because I think I just forgot to turn my recording software on. We all have those days. And I just thought it would be so neat to have the little koi fish hanging out in the pond. The lily pads, or the water lilies that come with Snowy Escape, there will actually be koi fish that come up to the water lilies, which is just so cute and gorgeous. So here I am putting some windows into the tea house and getting that resituated, since I did knock quite a bit of it down. And this is a little platform for the tea ceremony that I'm putting in here. And like I said, this is not necessarily meant to represent a traditional tea house. This is more representative of a tea house in Oregon, and I'm also not any kind of an expert on tatami mats either. So please do not think that this is how everything is supposed to look. I did do a little bit of research, but I am fully aware that I may have gotten some things wrong. So here we are just putting in some lighting. I used those lanterns from Snowy Escape as well. I used quite a few items from Snowy Escape. The tea set that is in inside the tea house, that actually comes from the paranormal stuff pack, oddly enough. I was looking for it forever in the Snowy Escape pack, and lo and behold, that's not where it was. So here I'm putting in a Genkon so that you can take off your shoes before coming in for the tea ceremony, and just lining that with some tatami mats and putting in a little shoe rack and a shoe sign here. So this lot, it would probably work best as a community lot. I think that I had it set when I was building it as a residential lot, just so I could play test things and see different elements in live mode, which especially after I started putting in like dragonflies and fireflies and things of that nature, just so I could get a better sense of the build. And here I'm putting in a few more little bits and bobs, filling in some more spaces, some more empty spaces with flowers. And I think I also, when I put the pond tool in, I think I put some water underneath. Yeah, here we go. Here's the pond tool. That was so satisfying to just like go in and raise that water level and then finish off the little bits and bobs at the end and getting it all set up and pretty. And I really liked the idea that the entire tea house is set into the pond rather than the pond just sort of coming up to the edges. I had a heck of a time with the foundations on the tea house. I think I finally fixed them in the final build, which will be on the gallery. I will put that up pretty much when I put this video up. This build should be on the gallery at that point. So here I am just putting in some little pond bits and bobs. So there's a little log and the water lilies for the koi fish that I was talking about, adding some reeds and flowers and little bits of vegetation around the edge of the pond, trying to make it blend into the surroundings. And what I discovered is that smoothing the edges, it seemed to work the best with kind of making it look like it came out of the ground that way. Like if you could see, you can bring the edges right up to the vegetation, which I think looks the best. As you saw before, I was trying a couple other ways, and this was the very first thing that I used the pond tool for, was this build. And so here I'm adding in some effects. I've got some ducks, some tadpoles, some fireflies for the evening time, a few swans. I love that we have that submerged object. I have not used it yet, but I think that will look really cool when I do use it for something. I'm sure I will. Maybe like a buried treasure build of some kind. I don't know. So here I'm just putting in some rocks and a few little bits more of vegetation just to fill out this little area that ended up not fitting with the pond aesthetic in the way that I wanted it to, and putting in some grass there, some more of that sodden swampy grass, and covering up the edges of the pond, because I wanted everything in this build to just be lush and green and grassy, and like you could smell the scent of the water and the trees and the leaves, you know. And then you can smell the flowers in the tea house looking down. And I also wanted this to feel like a very well established space, not like a brand new space that has just been put together recently. I wanted it to feel just very, established is the word. All right, guys, we are coming up on the screenshots pretty soon here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.